want to start the show by reading some of my guests' latest piece for The Atlantic. And I'm quoting here, and he's on the same page with me about where we are right now. And it's called "The Civil Military Crisis is Here. The leaders of the U.S. military may soon face a terrible decision." It's by Tom Nichols. And he says, quote, "To capture a democratic nation, authoritarians must control three sources of power: the intelligence agencies, the justice system, and the military. President Donald Trump and his circle of would-be autocrats have made rapid progress towards seizing these institutions and detaching them from the Constitution and rule of law. The intelligence community has effectively been muzzled, and the nation's top lawyers and cops are being purged and replaced with loyalist hacks. Only the military remains outside Trump's grip, despite the firing of several top officers and Trump's threat to fire more. The U.S. armed forces are still led by generals and admirals whose oath is to the Constitution, not to the commander-in-chief. But for how long? Trump and his valet at the Defense Department, Secretary of Physical Training, Pete Hegseth, are now making a dedicated run at turning the men and women of the armed forces into Trump's personal and partisan army. In his first term, Trump regularly violated the sacred American tradition of the military's political neutrality. But people around him, including retired and active duty generals such as James Mattis, John Kelly, and Mark Milley, restrained some of his worst impulses. Now, no one is left to stop him. The president learned from his first term struggles and this time has surrounded himself with a cabinet of sycophants and ideologues rather than advisors, especially those at the Pentagon. He has declared war on Chicago, called Portland, Oregon a war zone, and referred to his political opponents as the enemy from within. Trump clearly wants to use military power to exert more control over the American people, and soon top U.S. military commanders may have to decide whether they will refuse such orders from the commander-in-chief. The greatest crisis of the American civil-military relations in modern history is now underway. That is powerful stuff. And we are grateful and thankful that Mr. Tom Nichols, who wrote that, is here. Tom is a staff writer at The Atlantic and a contributor to the Atlantic Daily newsletter. Why'd you write that, sir? Why'd you feel compelled to write that in this moment? And good evening to you. Thanks for appearing.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for having me. I wrote it because I'm concerned too. I spent 25 years teaching military officers. I spent a total of almost 30 years at the Naval War College in one capacity or another. And I knew a lot of officers, knew a lot of generals, knew a lot of admirals. And what Trump is doing is so far beyond what any president, I won't even say what any president would have dared to do, what any president would have wanted to do. We've had 46 presidents, 46 presidents. George Washington established this tradition that the military is the people's military. The president is the elected commander-in-chief, but that the military serves the Constitution, obeys the legal, lawful orders of the president, but it is not the president's militia. And Washington, I wrote about this just before Election Day last year. Washington really worried about that. He really worried about what happens when you have an army, that is just waiting for a Caesar. And I think Trump has just decided that, everything, because this is how he thinks of the presidency. Everything in America belongs to the president. The White House, mine.
Yes.
Artifacts from the Eisenhower Museum, mine. Executive department's mine, all of it. And that the army belongs to him. And now he's going to use that army to extend his power to prevent people. I can't believe I'm saying this because it sounds like such a conspiracy theory, but I think it's still a big part of this is about deflecting attention away from Epstein and
I think
Congress potentially losing in the midterms. And, you're worried. I'm worried.
I think you're 100% right. And I also think when you said he thinks he owns the military, I think he thinks he owns America. I believe that someone needs to give them a civics lesson, all of the folks who are there in Washington, because they think that the American people and the press work for them when it's the other way around. These people are public servants and they work for the American people. And Donald Trump lives in public housing. Somehow they have forgotten that. And I'm not sure how to correct it. I'm
not either, because no one stops him. I mean, he's, he's tearing apart the White House, literally, covering it in glitz and gold, and building himself a ballroom where he can hold court like like the northern equivalent of Mar-a-Lago. And I mean, he held the Republican convention there the last time he was president, which of course is against the law. It's violation.
I've forgotten about that.
Of course, the president,
The
by
big
the way,
monitors on the lawn.
the president is not subject to the Hatch Act, but everybody else that was standing around is. And you can't use, as you put it, public housing. You can't use government property for political aims. But Trump doesn't care about any of that stuff. And it's one thing to kind of roll your eyes and say, well, when he's gone, we can tear up this stupid ballroom and put the Rose Garden back and sort of restore the buildings to normal. We're not going to be able to restore the army to normal, especially if he starts firing people and replacing them with loyalists and hacks, as he's done elsewhere. He's done it at the Justice Department. He's trying to do it in the intelligence community. It's a little harder to do in the military, because you can't just pluck somebody out of civilian life and say, now you're a 3-star general. You have to have somebody who has some military experience. So it's a little slower going when you're trying to capture the military.
A bit off subject. What did you think? Because I haven't spoken to you. What that ridiculous speech to military commanders and officers last week. I was cringing, and I felt bad for them, because I thought it was so disrespectful, especially when you have someone like Donald Trump standing there who is so out of shape, not in good health, and they have the nerve to be lecturing people about the way they look and how much weight they have on their bodies.
The military, senior military, will take a lot from the commander-in-chief because he's the commander-in-chief. They have saluted smartly many commanders-in-chief that they don't happen to like. And I know that for a fact. I mean, I started working, the first time I was ever at a military institution, it was during the Reagan administration. It's a very different environment during the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, but whatever their personal feelings, they'll salute. The guy I think that really pissed them off was Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
This passed over major who's, military experience, a couple of years, as a junior officer in the National Guard, not to piss on his service. He served his country. He went where he was sent,
but qualifications are important. Yeah.
On the other hand, as I think it was my colleague Elliot Cohen who pointed out, he was talking, Hegseth, who really doesn't have a whole lot of experience, was talking to a room that had the accumulated equivalent of 25,000 years of military service in it. You got 840 generals, their aides, their staffs all sitting there. You're literally talking about 25,000 years of service. And this guy's strutting around saying, we're done with that shit. And you guys got to lose some pounds, and I'm going to shave. And I mean, I'm sure, especially considering how many of those guys know, that Pete Hegseth has not exactly been a model of virtue in his private life. It was probably pretty galling to have to sit there, and listen to that kind of a speech from somebody like Hegseth.
I want to go through a couple of things with you and I want you to listen to some of the developments throughout the day. This is Donald Trump. Now, see if you can explain to me what he's talking about, because clearly here he's saying, look, it's obvious that Donald Trump has never read the Constitution, or at least does not have a grasp of it or understanding of it. But he's saying we took someone's freedom of speech away. Did you see that? I'll play it for you. Here it is.
Only days ago, Nick Sortor was assaulted in Portland by a flag-burning mob, and we've made it 1-year penalty for inciting riots. We took the freedom of speech away because that's been through the courts, and the court said you have freedom of speech. But what has happened is when they burn a flag, it agitates and irritates crowds. They've never seen anything like it on both sides, and you end up with riots. So we're going on that basis. We're looking at it not from the freedom of speech, which I always felt strongly about, but never passed the courts. This is what they do, is they incite. When you burn an American flag, you incite tremendous violence. We have many examples of it.
Tom, what is he saying there? I took someone's freedom of speech away?
It beats me. You can't take someone's freedom of speech away.
Well, they're trying.
he was reading. I mean, one of the things, and this is just off the subject, I always get physically tense watching Trump try to read because it's so effortful for him. It's so he struggles with words on the written page, and you can see that he's more comfortable when he kind of sits back and goes into riffing. Look, I think one of the things we just saw in that clip you just played, Don, is one of the things I wrote after that big meeting with the admirals and the generals.
Mm-hmm.
I think they walked out of there saying something's not, the commander-in-chief's not okay. There's something wrong with this guy. I mean, you watch it here. You know, if that were your grandfather, you'd be going to your parents and saying, listen, we got to talk about Pop. You know,
Tom, I said that live as he was reading it. I said, can someone tell Grandpa, and can someone take his keys away? As he was saying it, I mean, we have the same thought.
At the moment he was there,
I
don't want to freak people out any worse than they are. But just remember, as he was sitting there doing that, somewhere, if he was doing what he's supposed to do as president, somewhere in his pockets, in his wallet or his jacket or somewhere, he has a little card that has the code to 1,500 strategic nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, goes through this business about we're taking away freedom of speech. What he really means, and I think what he was struggling to say is, if it were up to me, because he kept saying, oh, I've always felt strongly about it, but I can't get it through the courts. If it were up to me, I would take people's freedom of speech away for stuff that I just don't like, which is not the job of the president of the United States, who is sworn to take care that the laws are faithfully executed and to support and defend the Constitution.
Yeah. One more where he's talking about he's going to be far more threatening to American citizens. Here it is.
They have been very threatening to people, but we're going to be very threatening to them, far more threatening to them than they ever were with us. And that includes the people that fund them. Probably some of the people I know, some of the people I dine with. But if they do, they're in deep trouble. So we're going to be looking very strongly at the people that are funding these operations. When you see the signs, and they're all made out of a beautiful paper, beautiful, nice, stiff, very expensive paper with beautiful wood handles, all the same color. They come from very expensive printing machines. These are not people that write out their signs in a basement that believe in something. These are paid anarchists.
He keeps checking his notes. These are paid
Someone
anarchists.
wrote that for him.
Someone wrote that for him, exactly. And I'm guessing it's Stephen Miller, who was sitting, you know, a few seats down from him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's hard to parse what he's saying. I mean, he goes on, you can see his vocabulary becoming more limited as he gets older. Everything is beautiful. Everything is, you know, like you've never seen. And again, I think I think what he's saying is, I am going to issue executive orders, break the law if I need to, invoke the Insurrection Act, and I'm going to punish people for being liberal Democrats, because what he's clearly trying to do is this thing called Antifa. And by the way, I'm going to be a grumpy old conservative here, and this is why I told people years ago, don't create names. Don't do that. Don't do the Antifa thing, because somebody's going to believe that you guys, you know, you protesters in the streets are like Spectre, you know, or something, because you're giving yourselves a name. And he's latched onto that to say, now this is the equivalent of being a liberal Democrat. And therefore I'm going to declare everybody a terrorist. And I'll just, you know, vent about one more thing, Don. This is the result of over 20 years of promiscuously using the word terrorist to refer to anybody we just don't like or anything that scares us. And Trump is pushing that button. Antifa are terrorists. Democrats who support my opponents are terrorists. Drug runners are narco terrorists. I mean, far be it for me to ever argue that Donald Trump is clever, but he does have this kind of lizard brain instinct for button pushing. Yeah. And I think that's all of that kind of mumbling around that you just heard is his way of saying, I'm going to declare everybody who's my opponent to be a terrorist, basically.
And you're right. This report came across not long before we started streaming. The Trump administration officials are seriously discussing invoking Insurrection Act.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
Of course they are. And you know, during before January 6th, there was talk about that in the investigations into what happened on January 6th, or people in the White House and the DOJ talking about, well, you know, invoke the Insurrection Act. That'll clamp down on, anti-Trump protests. I think that they are headed for it. They've been wanting to do it. They've been planning to do it since the day they were elected. Actually, they've been planning to do it in this 4 years that they've been waiting to get back into power. But I have no doubt that they're going to try and invoke the Insurrection Act as a way of quelling and suppressing dissent and public demonstration, taking away people's constitutional rights.
Yeah, look, you mentioned how he has glommed onto that name, and I want to just this is the NBC report. Trump administration officials seriously discussing invoking Insurrection Act, according to sources. But the thing that I want to play for you, because you mentioned how they've glommed onto that name, and that is, this is what Kristi Noem is saying. Now watch. She is comparing Antifa, which is right, anti-fascism is what it stands for, to Hamas. Here it is.
We arrested recently in Portland was the girlfriend of one of the founders of Antifa, and that we are hoping that as we go after her, interview her, and prosecute her, we will get more and more information about the network and how we can root them out and eliminate them from the existence of American society. I want to thank the new journalists here today for telling their stories and for being able and willing to go to the streets and to cover what's happening here in America. Many times the legacy media has looked the other way, refused to tell the stories. The networks have not really focused on what this is and what damage it is doing to our country, and how this network of Antifa is just as sophisticated as MS-13, as TDA, as ISIS, as Hezbollah, as Hamas, as all of them. They are just as dangerous. They have an agenda to destroy us, just like the other terrorists we've dealt with for many, many years. And today is the day that we have a president that won't tolerate it and will stand up and fight for the American people. So thank you for being here, for being so bold, and for standing in the gap at such a time as this. It will matter. It will make a difference, and your life will be one of significance because of what you've done today. So with that, God bless you, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Oh, brother. Okay, so what the words that stood out to me, a lot of it did, but remove them from the existence in society. Did you catch that?
And also, just a very, that's a very clever formulation. The founder, one of the founders, like this is, the PLO or the IRA or, MS-13 or whatever it is. And it's meant to basically take this thing called Antifa, declare it to be terrorist, and then say everyone who dissents or demonstrates or protests is basically an emanation of this terrorist group that we've decided to identify. I mean, they're laying a legal structure for doing terrible things. And it's not surprising to me that Noem is, I remember years ago when she was still a governor, calling her out as a fraud and someone who was looking to make this kind of jump to Washington to do something like this. And, here we are. And I think one thing you have to understand about all these people is that they wouldn't be in Washington without Donald Trump. And so they're going to do whatever, people who go into government, sorry, I'm detouring here for a moment. People who go into government who say, I'm a person of achievement in my own right. I've had a career. I've done certain things. They're the ones who stand up and say, I'm going to resign rather than do these things. There are things that I will not do because I'm a person grounded in my own, background and experience. All of these people around Trump know that basically without Trump, they don't exist in politics. This is why I keep saying he's the patron saint of the third string. And so none of these people are going to stop him. They are going to enable this to the maximum extent they can, because that is not just what Trump wants, but that's congruent with their personal interest and their ability to stay, in the Emerald City.
I want to play something for you. It's a little long, but I want you to watch it because this has to do with the media. Now they're talking about new media here, all right? And that's what this little briefing was about, inviting new media in to talk and try to get new media for them to.
I was going to say that term itself is again a term, new media.
Yeah. What they mean are MAGA and conservative influencers that they had there, right? And because as new media, right, someone who's in the digital space now, I applied for press credentials for the White House, right? Never heard from them. And you would think if they're going to do new media, they would want all kinds of voices in there. But It seems
Oh,
that
my
the
sweet summer child.
but it seems the folks that they want in the briefing room or want whatever in these new media briefings, they only want conservatives. And so, or MAGA folks, or people who are going to kiss their
Yeah, they
butts.
don't want right? Not conservatives, certain kind of conservatives.
Yeah, MAGA conservatives. So I listen to this because he's talking about the media. It's just a bizarre, and it seems so petty to me that a president would stoop to this level to discuss the issues that he's discussing in the way he's doing it. Here it is.
That we're liars, the riots aren't that bad, right? I've never seen any of you guys on the ground. In fact, I've never seen anybody representing the companies you work for on the ground. You guys come to us for interviews that never get published. Stop saying we're lying. We're not. We risk our lives every day to do the job that you guys are too afraid to do.
What network would you say is the worst, if I could ask?
Oh, man, yeah, that's a real tight spot.
Honestly, it's a simple question.
Well, there's a lot of people in this pool, and I would say I'm not talking about Fox. I'm not talking about Newsmax or any outlet that resembles them, so I'll let you guys put the pieces together on who I'm exactly talking about.
Who would you say? Which network?
MSNBC, for sure.
Oh, they're terrible. I agree. They're
CNN,
terrible.
probably close, yeah.
Yeah, I'd rate it that way, yeah. MSNBC, that's Brian Roberts.
Yeah.
That he allows that to happen is a disgrace.
You see what he's doing there, right?
CNN is second.
Yeah.
I would say CNN is not quite as bad as MS.
MSNBC is not really a news site anymore.
Oh, MSNBC is sick.
Yeah.
They're sick.
Well, sir, it's also
else?
just the stories that they publish about what's the ICE enforcement operations that are so heavily slanted that it's no longer, as I was saying, no longer just Antifa, but Americans that are becoming radicalized. So they've been very irresponsible with how they've been reporting
Who
on
is
it.
that?
MSNBC, for example, they're
Would you rate them the worst?
probably.
Who would you rate second?
Well, they ran a story about an operation in Southern California about how a father of 3 Marines was arrested, and they made it seem like they just did it because he's brown.
Okay. Tom, and did you catch that Brian Roberts, he's calling them out, right? That's a warning shot to Brian Roberts. Watch yourself. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And then CNN, whatever, CNN is probably going to get bought by Ellison, which is another conservative. And it's going to go, if it is bought, it's going to go into the conservative category along with CBS and 60 Minutes. And then, so here we go. We're in for a new era. But what did you think of that? Why is he even talking about this? And why does he care so much?
Because he is the thinnest skinned man on the planet. I mean,
But he sounds like an idiot, Tom. He sounds petty.
But
yeah.
Don, I mean, you've been around New York for a long time. You remember the old Donald Trump long ago. Oh, I first moved to New York in the first time I ever went to New York. I was there for grad school in the early 80s. And even I knew, because Donald Trump was ubiquitous. He's been like this his whole life. He takes every slight, nurses it. His life is about grudges and grievance and vengeance. And I think that's actually, I hate to say this, but that's a big part of his appeal. I think a lot of Democrats, a lot of liberals, a lot of pro-democracy, generically pro-democracy people who oppose Trump still have this idea that, well, people voted for him because eggs were expensive and, inflation was getting to 6% and mortgage. There are millions of people who love this. This is their reality TV show. Who's Trump going to get even with this week? And I think that's when we talked earlier about nobody stops him from doing this. He knows his base. He knows what they want to see. And they want to see this kind of a reality show where he calls out all the networks that they don't watch and have no idea, what's on them as the enemy, as, as the people that are out to get him and out to get them. And by implicating, you hear this when he's talking to these younger guys, right? That there's a resentment there, that these are the media establishment that look down on us, that we're the ones doing the real work and these guys don't. And, who are they when we're the ones that, are really on the ground? And it's just resentment and grievance all the way down.
Tom Nichols, man, I appreciate what you do more than you know.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just such great work, and you're always right on it. Maybe it's because we always think very similarly, and so, but also
who's the best media figures, Don?
Who are the best media? Well, Tom Nichols,
the people who agree with me clearly. But thank you, I appreciate it.
There's one other guy I do like. I don't know if you like him, but I do like John Heilman. I think he's a good dude.
Oh, sure. Except John and I always disagree about music. He hasn't ever let me get off of the fact that I hate Led Zeppelin. And Heilman
wait. I'm going to hang up right now. You don't like Led Zeppelin? You don't like Robert Plant? Like what is going on? I hate Led Zeppelin.
Heileman's been on me for like 10 years about Led Zeppelin. And I just can't, it's the one place where we in everything else, we have no problem. But when it comes to Zeppelin, John just won't let me off that hook. I can't deal with him, John.
Your eye that keeps shining.
No.
Like a star that can't wait for a night.
Actually, it's worse than that. Heilman and I got into a fight because I said I would rather listen to the first Boston album forever rather than listen to Led Zeppelin.
Well, the only issue, which is a big issue that I have with Led Zeppelin, is just how much of the music that they stole from other people.
Well,
and
that
those lawsuits,
I can't take Robert Plant's voice. Nothing against Mr. Plant. He's a great, pillar of rock and roll. Just don't like his voice.
Yeah. Well, we'll agree to disagree. But anyways, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Tom Nichols. I'll see you later. The great Tom Nichols from The Atlantic. You got to check it out and check out his the newsletter that he writes for The Atlantic as well. Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.